Are you fluent in sports? I'm Anthony Kay, and this is Sports Fluent. I have a very special guest with me this week. It's Hue Jackson. Coach, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
So I have a bunch of questions for you, but I want to start with one that I don't know how many people ask you this, because I know you've been coaching for a long time, and you coached in college, you obviously coached in the pros. Is there something about the college game you miss?
There is. I probably miss the pageantry more so than anything. Just the excitement of the games. Not that you don't get excited for NFL games, but boy, the students, because they take a lot of pride in their schools, and to walk sometime through the stadium and come out of those particular tunnels and locker rooms, it's just a little bit different than the National Football League. Now, don't get me wrong. Like I said, there's a tremendous high on game day in the National Football League, but it's a different type of atmosphere than it is at a college.
All right. I was just always curious about, because you see some coaches kind of who've come into the pros and then go back. And I always wonder, what's that thing that's drawing them back? And it makes sense. It makes sense.
Because a lot of us, that's what we came from. We came from the college game. And probably a lot of us, in order to get these National Football League jobs, we've had a lot of success in college. So that's what you're used to. So you get drawn back to that.
We're preparing for the NFL to come back. Mm-hmm. And we've seen, obviously, COVID is something I'd love not to talk about, but we have to.
Absolutely.
We've seen leagues like the NBA and the NHL have success with their bubble. We've seen Major League Baseball kind of struggle with their lack of a bubble. And the NHL's kind of going down that, or NFL's going down that road a little bit without the bubble. What are you hearing from coaches and players, and how they're going to deal with it? There's been a ton of players that have opted out. Not as many as I thought, to be honest, so not too bad, but what are you hearing, and do you have?
Well, here it's been tough. Everybody's trying to do the best job that they can to work through it, work through everything that's going on. I think it's been difficult. At best, you just saw this past week all the false tests that happened. And so, there was numerous coaches that didn't work that day. There was numerous players that didn't work in certain organizations that day. And they're about to play a game here within less than 3 weeks. So they lost a very valuable coaching day. Yeah. So, and can that happen again? Will that happen again? I think all of those things, because if you think about it, some teams, the players were on their way into the building and they stopped them and said, you can't come in, go back home, because there's positive tests. And so then they call them later on and say, oh, by the way, they were all negative. Come on in and let's practice.
Right. And if there's false positives, there's going to be false negatives. And that's the bigger concern, right? Because if it's a false positive, okay, you send them home. You got to figure that out. But a false negative, now you're sending someone in that could.
It could be really scary. That is a great. That could be the end all be all right there.
Yeah. And so, have there been any talks? And I don't know if you know or not, but about expanding the rosters. So should there be obviously someone tests positive, do they have an expanded roster? Do they increase the practice team so that they, if they have fill-ins at a moment's notice, they can bring some extra guys in?
I think the rosters are expanded initially right now.
Yeah.
From where they are. Now there's been no talk about what the rosters will be once the regular season starts. I think it's still going to be the same as it's been always. I don't think that will change, but I think that's a great idea, a great point, that maybe they should consider that. And I say that just from an injury standpoint. When you look at what's going on right now, there's so many guys getting injured and banged up because they didn't have that off-season training. We can say what we want. That's what it is. I was involved with it in the strike year, and we came, and the players, we had to handle it the right way to make sure these guys had a chance to get into the game. And what these guys are doing now with no preseason games and immediately going to play a game, that's going to be tough. It's going to be tough.
Yeah, it's one thing to kind of work out by yourself at your home gym. It's another to kind of get out and take a few hits. The game speed's always a little bit different versus what you're doing on your own. Throughout your career, you know this. I don't know how many other people know. You've had a lot of success, right? Like I ran through and I looked at, when you were the offensive coordinator for the Raiders, they were the 4th ranked offense. Darren McFadden had one of his best years. When you were the wide receivers coach with the Bengals, you had Chad Johnson, and TJ, I always say his name wrong, Hushamanzada, both over 1,000 yards receiving. I think when you're the OC with the Bengals, Andy Dalton probably had his best years. And, most people look at the playoff or the lack of success in the playoffs, but forget how good those teams were throughout the regular season. And the reason I bring all that stuff up is you understand the offensive side of the ball better than most. And there's been some big offensive shifts this offseason. So I want to throw out a couple of names to you, and I'd love your opinion on how you think they're going to adapt to their new systems or how their coaches are going to adapt to that. So obviously the big one, Brady to the Bucks. Mm-hmm. How does he fit into Bruce Arians' system, his plan? Do they change it more for Brady, or do they ask Brady to change?
Well, I think that's a great question. I don't think there's any question how that one's going to –
Right.
I think Tom is in control.
Yeah.
I say that because you just brought a high-value player at the most important position, who's the GOAT of the National Football League, into your organization. He has immediate credibility with the players. He has immediate credibility with the coaches. This guy is a 6-time Super Bowl winning champion.
Right.
So you're going to do what he needs done.
Right.
If that's what smart coaches do. Now, do you help refine some of the things he does and cross the T's where maybe he didn't cross it and dot the I's maybe where he didn't? Yeah, that's what coaching is. But you have to let this guy be who he is, because that's when he's at his best.
Right.
So if you go change him and say, you're going to run Bruce Arians' system like Ben Roethlisberger did, or whoever played quarterback for Bruce,
right.
I don't think it works.
Right.
I think that would be a disaster. And I think Bruce is a smart enough coach. He knows that.
Right. So I'm going to talk about 2 starters and 2 backups, and I'll explain to you why in a minute. So the second one is Phillip Rivers. So Rivers goes to the Colts. Mm-hmm. Same type of thing. He's a veteran guy. He's proven in the league. They're going to make adjustments for him. And how do you think he fits in with that Colts offense? I
think he will fit in well. I say that because he's a veteran player, and nothing against Jacoby Brissett. He's better than Jacoby Brissett. Just be honest. And so you're talking about a potential future Hall of Fame player in Phillip Rivers, who's now your quarterback. So it goes back to the same thing. You go back and you start to do those things that he's most comfortable at, because you need him to play at a high level. And if he does, the win total at the Colts are going to go way up. So the key to it is giving these guys, the 2 men you just mentioned, the right environments that allow them to be who they are and be the best versions of themselves, because they have a way of rallying teams around them. Tom has shown that. Phillip has shown that. So that's the best thing they can do for these guys.
So my next one is a little personal.
Okay.
As you can see, the Bears jersey in the background here.
I see it.
I do have a Bengals fan in the household, so we're going to get to the Bengals a little bit more in a second. But Nick Foles to the Bears. So I know he understands that system. Is that a move that, as an offensive coordinator, you want a backup or potentially someone who can challenge the starter, who knows that system, who can help? Obviously he's there to push Mitch, help Mitch get better. But just in case of an injury or should he fail, you've got someone who can run an offense. Is that really the reason for Foles being there?
I think it's a combination of everything. I think you bring a player there if you think he can truly help.
Yeah.
One, the football team, first and foremost. You got to bring value to the team. Number 2, can he handle the environment that you're putting him in? Will he handle because right now when he walks in, it's seen that he could be the starting quarterback. It might not be Mitch Trubisky. Right. Some guys don't want to be put in that situation. Some guys can handle it. I would think that young man can handle it, because that's been his career over the last 5-6 years. The places he's been last, he was the backup, became the starter, and away he went. And some places he was a starter. So I think they brought him there because I think they felt he was the missing link. That if Mitch wasn't ready to really take it to another level, that they have somebody that they believe in and trust that could do that.
Because when you have a defense like that can control the game, that window's small, right? You have to do everything you can to take advantage of it, right?
Absolutely. I mean, as you know, this day and age of free agency, and the salary caps and the way they are and how you have to manage and massage that. And there's some players you don't want to let go, so you got to pay them. And some players you might have to let go. You have to make sure you have everything lined up right for that year.
Right.
So that you can be the best team you can be for that season.
And isn't that the beauty of football, right? It's maybe the one sport where a team that finished last can really, every year we start as fans, as players, as coaches we can make the Super Bowl this year. And I think that says a lot about the league. And I think that's why the fan base is so strong.
Right. Because it starts at the draft.
Right.
When fans, I'm talking about from a fan's perspective, you're putting 10 to 12 new pieces of gold on your team. And maybe some of them can't even play, but the fans don't know that. What they know is you drafted them.
Right.
Okay. They played somewhere, so they should be good enough. They should be able to compete. And sometimes that's not the case. You have to be first to tell you that that's not the case. And that shows itself real quickly, Yeah. But normally, the teams that are not very good, they're normally the teams that are picking early. And that's why you have to have everything aligned the correct way, because if you don't, now you're wasting your window and you're wasting valuable assets that may not be good enough to play at a high level.
Yeah. So my last quarterback is one you're familiar with, because I'll be honest, I'm surprised that he went and took a backup role. As I mentioned, I'm a Bears fan. My wife is a huge Bengals fan, so I hear a lot about this. I watch all their games. Andy Dalton to the Cowboys. I still believe I don't think he gets enough credit for as good of a quarterback as he is. And I was surprised that he went to somewhere like Dallas where, Dak's obviously the starter and he's going to take a backup role. Did that surprise you? Do what, as well as him, what went into, you think, into that decision?
Andy, it didn't surprise me because I think Andy wants to be in a situation on the downside of his career where he has a chance to win.
Yeah.
And put himself in a situation where he can experience something maybe that he didn't. He's won games and a lot of games in his career. What he didn't get a chance to do is win a playoff game. So I think for Andy, being in Texas is important to him too, because that's where he went to college, there. And so I think those pieces fit for him. At first, was I surprised that there wasn't a New England or there wasn't a Jacksonville or something like that grabbed him? But I'm not going to say I personally talked to him, but I know what went into the conversation is that his body of work has been shown.
Yeah.
So I think what he wants to do now is put himself in a position where he'll have a chance to win. And I think he really believes winning will help lead him to this next opportunity more so than let me go over here and be a starter for a team that might not be as good. Right. And I'm saying I'm playing. I think that's how he sees it.
Yeah, because from a Dallas standpoint, it makes complete sense. You get in a backup who can lead a team who,
yes.
there was the contract stuff, right? If Dak were to hold out or if Dak were to get hurt, you're very confident with Andy coming in and taking over that offense. Yes. From their standpoint, I completely understood. So, obviously we're talking a lot about quarterbacks. When you were in Cleveland, you drafted a young man. And in Baker, I'm curious to know, when you were there and you drafted him, what were those things in Baker Mayfield that you guys saw, hey, this guy's going to be a good NFL quarterback? And what are the things you think he still needs to do? Because he's almost there, right? What are those things he needs to work on to really take that next step?
What I saw was the arm talent, the ability to win, the desire to be great, the fire and passion that was in his belly to be one of the best. And I thought he would stop at nothing to have that happen. I think what has happened is coaching changes, system changes. They can kind of get a player off a little bit. I think he had a lot of success early, more success than most young guys. And I think going into year two, I think people thought it was just going to happen. It doesn't just happen. And I think he lost his fundamentals. When I watched the tape that I watched, fundamentally, he wasn't the Baker Mayfield that I know. And so everything that's coming out of Cleveland has been the new footwork. So I think they're stressing that, but you don't want it to be the new footwork and then something else falls off, So I think it's going to be so important. And why did I say it that way? I said it that way because here comes a new staff, here comes a new emphasis, here comes a new dynamic, and how fast can he grasp that? You know, how fast can he put all those things in his arsenal to be able to go play the way now this coach wants him to play?
Yeah. You said so much valuable stuff there. So I'm going to try and dissect a couple of them, because you mentioned kind of a new system and a new coach. And we see a lot of what we think are going to be good or great quarterbacks who go through head coach or offensive coordinator or, you know, quarterback coach, and they rotate. You know, Jay Cutler obviously comes to mind as an example. Always seem to have a new offensive coordinator where they have some early success. And is it something you see in a lot of young quarterbacks where if they do have that early success, they get away from those fundamentals and those basics that created that initial success, because now they're maybe trying to do too much or trying to do more because they're trying to get better?
No, I think if you go dive into some of these, and some of that, what you just mentioned, is a little true. But let's just take Baker's situation. The guy who was his quarterback coach, who was really involved in getting him to play at a very high level over those last 8 games, was not retained.
Right.
That makes a huge difference, because he knew what buttons to push to get this guy to play. Okay. And so here comes a new quarterback coach who didn't know him, and now Baker is probably feeling like, I got this, you know. And so this coach is probably a little apprehensive to jump in the fire pit with him, because he's thinking, this guy's finna go be, he's the first pick of the draft, this guy's finna go be everything. And then all of a sudden it's not going good, and you're looking for answers, and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
You know, so I've seen that happen to players. I'm watching Jameis Winston now. He goes to New Orleans, and you know, people forget when he was at his best and when he played extremely, extremely well is with Dirk Cutter. You know, and that was his guy. That was the guy that gave him a platform to play at a high level. And they didn't win enough, but they had one of the best offenses in football. And James was playing well. So coaches, the pairing of coaches and quarterbacks and coordinators and quarterbacks and the play callers, it is a skill. You got to make sure that you have the right people doing it.
Yeah, I feel like not enough emphasis is made on those positional coaches, right? Like you were a wide receivers coach. A QB coach is huge in the development of a QB, right?
So important. He's everything. I mean, I coached Joe Flacco, and I know that in his first 2 years in the league, I gave him the right foundation for him to become what he became. And I really believe that Kenny Zampese was doing that for Baker, and we'll see where he goes from there. But I've watched guys not make it because the coaching changed. You know, it really does affect those quarterbacks.
So lastly, love to talk about what you're doing now. So last year you were a special assistant to the head coach with the Bengals. I know you're in Cincinnati now. Is there, what's the plan for this year? And I promise we'll talk about the vodka in a minute too.
Oh, no, that's okay. Enjoying life. You know, I am full-time dad, and I have a tequila brand. I have some other things I'm involved in. There's some football things that I do personally for people. So that's been good. But I do want to get back to coach as fast as I can. My goal is next season be coaching back in the league, and maybe as a coordinator, maybe as a position coach, but go back and finish this thing off the right way. But I've found other things to do that excite me, you know, and I'm not going to be afraid when it is time to walk away from it all, because I think I'll be better prepared. Because I know what it felt like for now over a year and a half or almost 2, that at first you get kind of lost. You don't know what to do. And then you have to pivot and find things to do. And so it's forced me to prepare myself for when it is over, that I'm ready to make that switch.
Well, I'm glad that I hope we see you coaching sooner than later, because you're a great coach. Tell me a little bit about the tequila brand. Because I know that's
USDA 100% Grand Leyenda organic tequila, and it's out of Amatitan, is in Guadalajara, and that's where we make everything at, and it's shipped to us in California, and it's estate grown, it's handcrafted, it's the best, and we're growing it, we're starting to scale it, Matter of fact, we have a deal with Raider Nation, the Black Hole, and so they're putting our brand out everywhere. We're very excited about
How did you get involved? You're just a big tequila drinker, or they reached out to you? How'd you
that.
get involved with the tequila brand?
No, I wasn't a tequila drinker at all. I had a personal friend from high school who knew the guy who's the owner. He's a minority owner. He's the only black owner in the world in
Wow.
tequila. So he needed some assistance. We partnered, and it's been an unbelievable relationship, and we're doing some great things.
That's fantastic. Coach, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and I hope we can talk again real soon.
Thank you. You got it, buddy.